From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Good morning. Well, good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday, June 12th meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
We're going to begin our meeting with a salute to the flag, to be led this morning by our Director of Mental Health and Behavioral, I've forgotten the name of it. But he's going to walk us through that. And then would you please remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, and meditation. Thank you.
Thank you. Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services.
Thank you. I apologize.
Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we are going to proceed with our consent agenda this morning. Consent items are considered to be routine by staff and non-controversial. They are suggested to be voted on all at once by our staff. I'll go through what those items are. If a member of the public has a question about an item on consent, you can ask that in just a moment. And then I will go to the board, and the board will decide whether or not they want to pull any item from the consent calendar. So consent items begin on page 2 of our agenda, items 1, 2, then 4, 5, and 6. On page 3, all the items 9 through 16. On page 4, all the items 17 through 24. On page 5, items 25 through 28, and then 30 and 31. On page 6, items 33 through 35. Are there any members of the public that have a question or a comment about an item on consent? Yes, sir. Please come forward. Mr. Fluhart, please give us your name for the record.
David Fluhart, Havilah, 1st District. Usually when I get the agenda, I look for, first thing is non-CA items, and then I look for abnormalities, and I saw that CA number 1 is an Immigration Heritage Month proclamation, and it was kind of interesting. There's going to be nobody to receive this award, and in Kern County, I thought that was kind of amazing. But then I started researching it, and first thing I noticed how basically easy it is to get a proclamation. It was basically 2 letters, and it's on the agenda. So I want to say that's good that this is an easy process. And then the next thing I noticed was Clayton Fowler was the one that was promoting this, and Clayton Fowler is, I checked this with the company supporting this proclamation, and yeah, he's a son of Kern County, and he was Bakersfield College ASB president, and he's actually been here before, so I'm talking to you guys a couple of times. And then the next thing I noticed was it's from Meridian Pacific Incorporated, which is a Sacramento-based conservative Republican think tank, and I just want to say that's really nice that the Republicans are reaching across the aisle to help immigrants and acknowledge their hard work and effort in making this a great country. And I'm all in favor of this proclamation, and I hope we celebrate Immigrant Heritage Month as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fluhart. Any other questions about any item on consent? Okay, I'll return to the board then. Board members, do you want to pull anything, or do you have any comment before we get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda, please.
Sir. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Next up is item number 3 on this morning's agenda. It's an appointment of a qualified candidate to the Kern County Hospital Authority Board, Board of Governors. And Russell Judd, our Director of Kern Medical is going to, sorry, I got stutters there. Kern Medical is going to walk us through this process. Mr. Judd, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Kern County Hospital Authority has 7 members who oversee and govern the Kern County Hospital Authority and, of course, Kern Medical. Coley Magali was one of our founding board members, duly elected and appointed by your board, and she has chosen, upon the completion of her term, not to renew. We're grateful for her service. She's done a magnificent job, and we will duly recognize her at our upcoming Board of Governors meeting. The process is clearly outlined in the ordinance as well as the bylaws of the Kern County Hospital Authority of how a vacancy is to be replaced. We publish to the community that there is a vacancy on the Board of Governors. We put in the proper notice. It's published. It's on our website, and anyone who meets the basic qualifications is eligible to apply. We followed that process and received 3 applicants. The Board of Governors reviewed those applicants, made sure that they met the initial qualifications, and then had a robust discussion at the Board of Governors meeting of who they would recommend that your body elect to fill this current vacancy. After reviewing all those applicants, the Kern County Hospital Authority is recommending to your board that Raji Brar be appointed to fill the vacancy on the hospital authority. Raji comes to us with an immense amount of experience, both in serving as a member of a governing committee and governing board, as well as her personal experience in business. She happens to also have a master's degree in healthcare administration, has worked in healthcare, and now is successfully leading her family business. And so before you, you have ballots that have 3 names on it. The process is that you will vote and select one of those candidates, and then I think Madam Clerk will gather them and announce the results. But my personal recommendation, as well as the recommendation from the Board of Governors, is that you elect and appoint Raji Brar to fill the vacancy. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there is any about Mrs. Brar or the process.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Judd?
Would Mrs. Brar enjoy introducing herself?
You'll have to ask her that.
I thoroughly enjoy introducing myself. Good morning, everyone. I am just really excited to be able to, that Russell placed his trust, and the Board of Governors placed their trust in me to help serve on this board. I enjoy serving my communities in different capacities, and I think this is a great opportunity to learn and grow, but also to bring with me my background from Kern Family Healthcare and then my personal business background to make effective decisions at the Kern Medical Board. And I appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you today, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Raji. You're a real asset to our community.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe the process is that we each have a ballot in front of us. Can you please mark the candidate that you would support and then pass those towards me? You can fold them if you like or not. And then I will hand them to the clerk and she will tally the votes.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, ballot tabulation reflects that Raji Brar has received 4 votes with 1 board member absent, and having received a majority of the votes cast, Raji Brar is appointed as community member at large to the Kern County Hospital Authority Board of Governors, effective July 1 for 2018 for a 3-year term to expire June 30, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your service. We look forward to what you're going to do. Mr. Jebb, would you please extend our gratitude to the other candidates as well? Thank you. Next is item number 7, which is public presentations. We offer an opportunity at every one of our meetings for the public to come forward and share with us any concerns or thoughts they have about any item that is not otherwise on our agenda for that particular day. I know that Mr. Walker is going to come and talk to us about an item that is certainly very important and at the forefront of many minds with recent events. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Bill Walker, your Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services Director, and I'm joined by Ellen Agert and behind me, Chad Garcia. How do you say the last part of your name? Mione. And we're here today to talk about suicide and suicide prevention. I know that in the last week there were 2 very high-profile suicides, so I wanted to come forward and to mention some of the things that your department is doing and some of the direction we're going. And I've given you a copy, and if nothing else, we have a hotline that receives over 30,000 calls a year, and it is a certified suicide prevention hotline. If people call the national hotline in this area, it routes to your hotline that has been in operation for several years. Ellen is the supervisor of the hotline, and Ellen is really probably the community's best expert in suicide prevention. And I've given you a copy of her card because I know sometimes you get calls from constituents, and sometimes it's like, I think this is a call on something more than just trash or picking this up. This person may need mental health care. So I'm giving you a copy of the card, a copy of the signs, and I just want to let you know that we've been very active in a number of areas and very active in prevention and training. We do trainings like mental health first aid, QPR, which is question, persuade, refer. We have trained over 137 agencies, schools, businesses on how to question about suicide, how to persuade someone if you think they are suicidal to get help. And this is the kind of training that we could even do for your staff, for example, if you wanted them to be trained. It takes less than 2 hours to do the training. And so I just wanted to use last week's events to kind of bring back to light what your department is doing. On top of that, on top of the 30,000 plus thousand calls a year we take on the hotline, we average over 600 people who get evaluated for needing to be hospitalized in your psychiatric evaluation center. We have several hundred people that our mobile evaluation teams in connection with law enforcement actually come in contact with every month to evaluate them throughout the community. We are the only county that actually has a virtual mobile evaluation where law enforcement can contact us in some of the desert and rural areas through a HIPAA-protected system that allows them to talk to one of our staff directly. I want to finish my comments by talking just a little bit about where we're really going, and that is an initiative called Zero Suicide. Zero Suicide combines your medical professionals, your first responders, your schools, our agencies, and many other agencies to be trained to ask the appropriate questions. I went in for, I rode a mechanical bull a couple months ago and really messed up my knee, so I went in to see the doctor, and while I was there, he asked me about when was the last time I had a tetanus shot. And of course, I'm kind of stuck because I hadn't had a tetanus shot in a long time. He has a protocol to ask certain questions. He didn't ask me if I was feeling okay. He didn't ask me if I was suicidal. By the way, I did get a tetanus shot. He did ask me about tetanus because that's part of his protocol. When we finish Zero Suicide, it'll be the protocol for all of us to be asked how we're doing when we see our doctors, when we see certain professionals. And if the answer is I'm not doing well, they'll have answers of where to refer us. And what we found by evidence base is that this kind of approach greatly reduces suicides. Suicide is the most preventable cause of death in the United States. College age, second leading cause. Teenagers, third leading cause. Adults, I think it's 7th, 10th. There's a suicide every 12 minutes. There's a veteran who commits suicide. 22 veterans commit suicide a day. And it is the most preventable cause that is the least talked about in most of the arenas that we go to every day. And so the idea of Zero Suicide is to make suicide prevention a common part of the conversation in many of our regular events of our life, so that when someone is hurting, care can be provided. I wanted to take this moment also to introduce Ellen Agert so you would see her face, and I believe that Chad also wants to have a few words with you.
How you doing, gentlemen? I'm back. I don't ride mechanical bulls, I skydive, but you're all welcome to come skydive with me if you'd like. We take veterans, Supervisor Gleason, you're always welcome. So, 2012, we get back from Afghanistan, and within a week, we lost one of our guys in our platoon to suicide. Pretty shocking. We thought that was the last time we'd come across that. A year later, we're demobbing. Everyone's getting ready to move elsewhere, get orders to different schools and whatnot. We lost another one. My platoon ended up losing 3 men to suicide in the past 6 years since we've been back from our last deployment alone. That hit me hard as a leader and as a soldier, but I was broadsided November 29th when my mother committed suicide. Where I went from being a veteran advocate in regards to 22 a day to now I'm living daily this nightmare that my mother decided to do something like that. A woman who I couldn't have done anything I did in the military without the teaching that this woman gave me. She gave me my courage, my strength, my pride, being fearless. She taught me all that. And trying to accept that my mother decided to do that is, to this day, it's very difficult. Through meeting Ellen and Bill, I've become a huge advocate. I'm probably more of a suicide prevention advocate than I am a veteran advocate, believe it or not. This is something I created, #FightSuicide. I talk about it daily. I want to do what I can to help, and everything that Bill just brought to your attention, it works. It's 100% preventable in my opinion. You're never going to prevent every single suicide, but it is preventable. There's been a 30% increase since the year 1999, I believe, in suicide rates. Add that with farmers. Farmers are second only to veterans, farmers. And look where we live. This is a real problem, and I understand for somebody that's never encountered it, it's very difficult for you to grasp it because it seems kind of alien to you. Even as a veteran dealing with it, it was alien to me to a certain degree until my mother decided to do it. So I'm just here to raise awareness and to let each and every one of you know, and everyone listening, that this is a real problem. Suicide doesn't know sex, religion, faith. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your account. It doesn't matter what political party you have, that you affiliate with. Everyone's susceptible to it. And it's a real problem, and I will dedicate every single waking hour of my life to fighting it. And with your help, we can do a lot. There's a walk in September. I encourage everybody in this room to come and do the walk. We're planning a concert. Anything we can do to bring awareness to the community. This is something that we can all get behind, and I'm asking you to please do what you can to help out. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chad. Ellen, are you going to say anything this morning? No. I asked Mr. Walker to come forward, so that's why we've taken more than 2 minutes. Could you walk us through the signs to look for? And if you don't have that in front of you, I'll read the items.
Well, what we have realized is, we used to say 90% of people who died by suicide have a diagnosable mental illness, but the latest CDC report is showing that it's also life, relationship issues, substance use issues, financial issues. And people who are talking about ways to kill themselves. Isolation is a huge thing. We're so connected today this way. We're not connected anymore. We don't get together and talk. You go out to dinner and you see people, everybody's on their phone. Are you okay? We need to get in touch with each other now. People call our hotline all the time and just want somebody to listen. And after I call it emotionally vomit, after they do that for about 20 minutes and we've listened non-judgmentally, they feel better. So if you notice a friend of yours, their behavior has changed, something is different, we need to get involved and not assume someone else is going to. What's going on? Are you okay? And ask that question. Are you thinking about suicide? We're also afraid to ask that question, but you cannot put it in someone's head. If it's there, it's there. And asking that question, if they are, call us on the hotline. We will help you help that person, or we'll talk to that person. But Bill said it is one of the most preventable causes of death, but the rate is rising. There's more going on in suicide prevention in this country than there ever has been, yet the rate is going up. And we have to erase that stigma and taboo associated with suicide, because like Chad said, what do you think the typical suicidal person looks like? it's me and you. It's any of us who can be at risk. So if we all become suicide aware and know the warning signs and aren't afraid to talk about it, we can prevent it. I go to most high schools here and teach awareness to the students. Most students know more about suicide than adults do. We need to change that around. All of us need to become suicide aware. And like Bill said, we do trainings. We will go any place to train people in suicide awareness. And zero suicide, we're the only county in the state of California who will be implementing that. So I have a feeling they're going to come ask us, all the other counties, hey, what are you doing? We're doing it. So we can prevent it, but we need to become suicide aware and not be afraid to talk about it. So with your backing and you talking about it, let's make all of Kern County suicide aware. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a history of suicide in my family, and even it occurring 2 generations before me still has repercussions into my generation of our family. So the implications of it go on and on and on, and it caused in my family, my mother to, during her lifetime, I don't know how many times she asked me, are you okay? Yeah. Just because she wanted to make sure. And I resented that when I was a boy and thought, well, Mom, yeah, I'm okay. But as I got older, I recognized that not only was she concerned about me, but she had the fear that was forced into her life. So I'm glad we're talking about it, and I appreciate you guys coming forward. Supervisor Gleason wants to say something.
Quick question. You mentioned the fact that your hotline, you use your hotline all the time. How many calls do you get a day?
It really varies. In the last week, we've had a 31% increase after the 2 suicide deaths. And Bill, I hate to, you said 30,000 calls. We get almost 40,000 calls a year.
So excuse me just for a second. So this one line that we use for a suicide hotline, you get how many calls a year?
About 40,000.
That's just our local calls.
Well, no, part of those are calls because we're part of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, so we get calls also from all over the world because we're part of that.
How many of those are, can we impact directly from Kern County? How many, do you have any idea?
Probably about half, maybe more than half, 25.
So you're estimating you get 25,000 calls a day on your suicide?
No, not 25,000 calls a day, about 100 a day.
About 100 calls a day. Oh my God. Okay, thank you.
So that's 25 people a day call the line from Bakersfield if it's 25%.
No.
It's not 25 to 50% from Bakersfield?
No, probably about, I can't tell you the exact numbers because it depends on what day I'm looking at. Probably about 25,000 of those calls are local.
To put some context to it, because it's difficult because not all the calls are necessarily suicidal who come in, but we average almost 30 people a day being brought into the Psychiatric Evaluation Center, and probably 70 to 80% of them were brought in for suicidal ideation. That's that unit a day.
How many a day?
Probably about 15 to 20 a day are brought in for being suicidal, physically brought into that unit. And then some of the people who call the hotline also call repetitively. You know, there's someone who needs to call over and over again. Right. But just know that every single day we have multiple contacts, and so do our first responders, law enforcement, and fire department. They're regularly in contact, first contact that they thought they went out on a medical issue, and what they actually have come on as a suicide attempt.
Well, as we proceed with the zero suicide protocol, I hope we find ways to make the public aware of these signs. Increased drug or alcohol use, withdrawal, changes in sleep, sudden mood changes, all those uncontrolled anger, reckless behavior, giving away all their possessions. I had a client once, he wanted to make sure that I got his tax return done immediately that year, and a week later killed himself. So, it's important for the public to know these things, so I hope we have a program where we'll roll out to the public these things to look for, to ask the question.
Thank you, Chairman. And as we move forward with this, there will be a whole media campaign that does that. It may even do what we've seen in some of the other campaigns, or it could be on the side of a bus going down the street, so it's so obvious that people see it every day repetitively.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Supervisor Couch.
I just have a comment, and I'm glad you said that you can't put it in anyone's head, because I can tell you that I, for one, would be very reluctant to even ask the question for fear of putting that in someone's head. So it's nice to know that you can't, and I think that is a point that you really need to drive home, because it would be a fear of mine to even ask that specific question for fear of putting it in someone's head.
Thank you for saying that, Supervisor Couch, because my generation believes that myth, and that's probably the biggest myth there is about suicide. But we know most people won't come and tell us they're thinking about suicide because they feel they'll be judged, called crazy, and all of that. Sure. But all of the research shows, and this is talking to people who've attempted and lived, they want us to ask them. And I've asked that question thousands of times, and people are relieved. They are so grateful that you asked, and most of the time they'll tell you the truth. So asking that question, it's scary because we're talking about life and death. But when you ask that question in a caring, non-judgmental way, people will tell you. I know it goes against what we all believe, but they will tell you. They'll breathe a sigh of relief and say, yeah, I am. And then we go from there and start figuring out how to get them help and get them safe. They will tell you, but that myth, I'll tell you, it perpetuates every place. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Thanks, you guys. Look forward to the rollout of this program. As I said, I asked Mr. Walker to come this morning to talk about this a minute, so we took a lot longer than 3 minutes on that issue. But I would now like to have any other members of the public come forward that have any issues to talk to us about that are not otherwise on our agenda, and you have up to 3 minutes to be able to tell us about that. 2 minutes, I'm sorry, 2 minutes to tell us about that. Mr. Fluhart, good morning.
David Fluhart, Havilah, 1st District. I don't know how to continue without a comment towards suicide. Life is just getting tougher. Society's getting more complex. It's like a big pressure cooker. And the margin of failure is getting slimmer and slimmer, and hopefully, you know, humanity and society can overcome that. What I really wanted to talk about was, you know, it's Immigration or Immigrant Heritage Month, and I know I lived far away once, and I really missed home, and it'd be really, really good if, in appreciation of all the dedication and hard work the immigrants put into this country, if we could try and find a way to help them visit home and visit their family and keep in touch with their heritage, where they came from. And you know, we have an airport just a few miles from here that's got an open port of entry, and if you guys really work on it and think about it and get creative and out of the box, I'm sure you guys can figure something out with that airport, and, you know, migration back and forth, and you know, I would, of course, would want to throw somewhere in there the possibility of marijuana or something. Anyways, you guys ought to call McCarthy and ask him, and hopefully he can talk to Trump. You know, I'm wearing a signal to him. And hopefully they can figure this whole thing out. And I think later on in the agenda at noon, closed session, you guys are going to be talking about the airport director. When you guys talk to him, hopefully you guys can use that as part of the you know, hiring process. Hey, what's your thought on making Meadowsfield a huge migration center or something like that? I don't know. It's just a crazy thought, thinking out of the box and out loud. So give it a thought, and hope you guys run with it. And you know, I think Trump will be all for it. He'll fix it. Anyways, thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Fluhart. I believe we have another. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Maggard and members of the board. My name is Tom Van Meter. I work in the Auditor Controller's office, but I'm not speaking on behalf of any employee in the Auditor's office today. On January 9th of this year, the Center for Public Safety Management presented their report, including 62 recommendations for the county's fire department. Your board authorized this study at a cost of almost $130,000. At the presentation, Chief Marshall articulated that staff had been going through the report and that they were taking the report very seriously. He said, what can we do today to bring savings and efficiencies to the department? Chief Marshal also said that they were putting together the pros and cons of the reports, what it would cost to implement, and what savings would be achieved. Chief Marshal finished up by saying that he wanted a very transparent process as they bring to your board items that can implement as soon as possible. 5 months later, Chief Marshal has not come before your board to present his ideas to reduce costs and present the pros and cons of the consultant's recommendations. What are the low-hanging fruit suggestions that his employee mentioned? Did Chief Marshal solicit ideas from his staff? Have the suggestion box and email address been established that his employee suggested to improve communication? If not, why not? If so, what suggestions have come in to help to reduce costs at the fire department? Where is the accountability for the $130,000 expenditure that we all chipped in to pay? Can the Board of Supervisors set a date for Chief Marshal to present to you and the community? Can he present even next Tuesday? The fact that the fire department will use $24 million over the next 3 fiscal years from the county reserves, and this county as a whole is scheduled to use approximately $50 million of reserves over the next 3 years, or 35% of its total reserves. How can this board be at peace with the fire department using $24 million of reserves over the next 3 years, while at the same time there has been absolutely no suggestions coming from the fire chief or his staff? It doesn't make any sense. There is no accountability. The General Services Parks Department from 10 years ago has reduced staff by 46% during the last 10 years. They went from 271 employees down to 147. The auditor's office had 60 employees. We're down to 42, a reduction of almost 33%. All other general fund departments have been taking cuts by reducing staff and expenditures. Services have been reduced. General fund departments are hurting. The 2.5% cuts and more that general fund departments have been taking these last 2 years and the years to come have been going directly to fund the fire department. The fire department is not taking any cuts. Supervisor Gleason, I thank you for being more vocal about trying to hold the fire department accountable. And today I'm asking if one of you can make a motion to require Chief Marshal to report back to this board immediately. We spent $130,000 with nothing to show for it. We cannot wait for a 5-year plan. Please preserve the financial stability and equilibrium of all county employees. Thank you.
Mr. Van Meter, thank you for coming forward this morning. Mr. Alsop, I believe next Tuesday we are having a discussion about our budget report. Is that next Tuesday or is it the Tuesday after that?
It's the 26th, Mr. Chairman.
Is that next? Oh, it's two weeks.
A couple weeks from today.
So could you arrange for the chief to come and give us an update on many of the things that Mr. Van Meter just suggested?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll have him there here for that meeting. Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to make a comment to us about something that's not otherwise on our agenda this morning? Okay, then I'll return to the board for any announcements or comments that they'd like to make. Don't see any, so let's move on now to item number 29. Item number 29 is an education and workforce development presentation, but I believe this item has been withdrawn. Is there a specific date to which it has been rescheduled, or is it just withdrawn without a specific date at this point?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is it will be placed on a future agenda. We don't know yet when the report will be made.
So since it's on the agenda, do I need to ask the public if anybody wants to make a comment about it? Does anybody in the public want to make a comment about number 29? It's going to be discussed at a future meeting. I don't see anyone. Okay, very good. Thank you. Next is item number 32, which is a request to issue a request for proposals for comprehensive community-based services for the criminal justice offenders through our probation department. Mr. Miracle, nice to see you this morning.
Good morning, Chairman Maggard, members of the board, T.R. Miracle, your Chief Probation Officer. But here today, I am here as the chair of the Community Correction Partnership. As you know, the CCP is a body that presents a AB 109 implementation plan every year to this board. The CCP meets regularly to discuss how to handle the responsibilities that realignment placed on Kern County. It consists of many departments: the probation department, sheriff, district attorney, public defender, behavioral health, Bakersfield Police Department, ETR, and many more. The CCP is committed to public safety in Kern County by taking a balanced approach of both accountability and opportunity. We believe strongly that offenders need to be held accountable for their actions. However, we also believe that people in our community deserve an opportunity to turn their life around. This is the best way to secure long-term public safety by preventing reoffending. From early on, the CCP has supported community-based organization services. In fact, the CCP has approved in the past over $9.4 million since 2012. CBO services have many benefits. They fill in service gaps and help maintain a continuum of services. They minimize barriers to successful reintegration and rehabilitation, and they help reduce recidivism. The CCP values our community partners in this effort. The current RFP is worth over $5.5 million. It's for a 3-year period from January 2019 to December 2021. It will open on June 21st, and the deadline for those submissions is July 26th. The RFP will cover many services, including housing, education and vocation, case management, evidence-based practices, and best practices. The CCP is committed to making Kern County as safe as possible through a balanced approach of accountability and opportunity. This RFP represents one pillar in this plan. Therefore, it's recommended your board authorize the Chief Probation Officer to distribute the RFP to provide CBO services to criminal justice offenders in Kern County. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Miracle. Are there any questions by the board before we go to the public? Are there any members of the public that would like to make comment to us this morning regarding this item? Very good. Is there a motion then that we proceed with staff's recommendation and authorize the chief to distribute the document?
I will make that motion. and also want to thank Chief Miracle for your leadership, continued leadership, do such an excellent job for us on the CCP, along with all of our members. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'll second that and also make a comment that I talked with some people in the probation department recently, and they're very proud of you, and they're very, from their perspective, you're doing a great job. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Miracle. That concludes our agenda for the morning. We have closed session to deal with between now and our 2 o'clock session. So is there a motion that we adjourn to closed session?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Without objection, so ordered. We'll see you at 2 o'clock.
Time in one's life. But for some, it's just